Tonight, a new series from ABC 57 investigates Broken Heart, the Elkhart police saga. For months, we've been digging into shocking accusations of police misconduct and coerced confessions within the Elkhart City Police Department.
Those accusations have led to guilty verdicts being thrown out of court and people walking free from prison. ABC 57 investigative reporter Richard Bodee sat down with Elkhart's mayor and police chief to discuss the situation. Richard.
Tim and Tiffany, right now there are 5 people who have been exonerated in Elkhart, most recently Andrew Royer. And now a lieutenant still employed by the Elkhart Police Department might lose his job.
Carl Conway started with the Elkhart Police in January 1998 and rose through the ranks, eventually becoming a lieutenant. Now, over 20 years later, he's still on the force. One murder case he started investigating in 2003 is now in the spotlight. Conway accused Andrew Royer of murdering 94-year-old Helen Saylor in 2002. Royer got convicted and sent away to prison, but new evidence suggests the interrogation process was flawed. Elliot Slosser, a law professor with the Exoneration Justice Clinic at the University of Notre Dame, explains.
Carl Conway interrogated Andy Royer over the course of 2 days without recording it and coerced him into a false confession.
Andrew Royer spent more than a decade and a half behind bars. Royer's legal team, which includes students from the Exoneration Justice Clinic, uncovered the fact that Lieutenant Conway lied under oath multiple times. After learning the details, Elkhart Police Chief Chris Seymour recommended Conway be fired.
Back in July, I sent the Elkhart Police nearly a dozen record requests, which includes trying to obtain more information on Conway's disciplinary record. This morning, we received the first of those requests. We are working to go through these documents now. But while waiting on these documents, I also sat down with both Elkhart Police Chief Chris Seymour and Elkhart Mayor Rod Robertson. Chief Seymour says he won't stand for this kind of officer conduct in his department.
I can live with mistakes as long as there's ownership, as long as there's a learning curve, because that's what discipline is designed for people to learn from their mistakes. In an instance where behavior is intentional is where I will and I have to draw the line.
In the last 2 years, at least 20 Elkhart police officers have been reprimanded under Seymour, which the chief says ranges from minor verbal infractions up to termination. Elkhart Mayor Rod Robertson wants people to know that city leadership is taking these investigations seriously.
I hate the fact whenever I see our police department being investigated. I like the thought that nothing is being swept under the rug. Everything is being looked at in earnest, and folk are going to be held accountable.
The Elkhart County Prosecutor's Office put Lieutenant Carl Conway on the stand during Andrew Royer's murder trial. Prosecutor Vicki Becker also sat down with me one-on-one and admitted she was present for at least part of the interrogation that led to Royer's innocence. So what gives? Did Becker know she was putting an officer on the stand that coerced a confession? I'll let you decide for yourself.
After we learned in July that Andrew Royer was found innocent of his murder charge and released from prison, we began digging deeper into what caused his exoneration. We started with Elkhart County Prosecutor Vicki Becker, asking her point blank if Lieutenant Carl Conway coerced a confession.
Do you think Detective Conway coerced a confession out of Andrew Royer?
It's probably not appropriate for me to do that. I can tell you, you know what? I do not believe he coerced a confession out of Andrew Royer. I saw quite a bit of it. It's definitely not what it's being painted to be, but I certainly don't want to make myself a witness in anything. I was in and out of the room. I listened to the audio recording multiple times, and no, I do not believe it was a coerced confession.
Vicki Becker saying, quote, I saw quite a bit of it, and quote, I was in and out of the room, is her saying that she was present for at least part of the interrogation of Andrew Royer back in 2003. But did she tell the courts she was an eyewitness? No.
Well, it's shocking that for 17 years, Vicki Becker prosecuted this case, signed the initiation of charges against Andy Royer back in September of 2003, and withheld from every single court that she was an eyewitness to Andy Royer's interrogation.
Fast forward 2 years. In August 2005, Elkhart County prosecutor Vicki Becker put Lieutenant Carl Conway on the stand. Conway lied several times over the course of the trial about feeding Royer information and about his knowledge of Royer's mental capabilities. Elkhart's chief of police, Chris Seymour, called Conway's lies, quote, an assault upon the institution of justice, and recommended the police merit board fire Conway. I asked Vicki Becker's office if she knew Conway was lying while on the stand. I also asked for a follow-up interview with her given these revelations. Her office declined. Elliot Schlosser is a Notre Dame law professor and works with Notre Dame's Exoneration Justice Clinic. He believes what Vicki Becker did was wrong and believes it puts her track record as a prosecutor into serious question.
For a prosecutor to sit there and withhold the fact that she witnessed this live, Andy's counsel would have had an opportunity to cross-examine her if she would disclose it. And a prosecutor who withholds evidence, that matters. And if a prosecutor would do that in a murder case, better believe they'd be doing it in lesser cases when people aren't paying attention.
In the screen beside me, you can see Dr. Richard Leo. He's one of the world's foremost authorities on police interrogations, coercion, and false confessions. He testified as an expert witness in Andrew Royer's case, and we sat down with him to break down the psychology of confessions and what went wrong in this case.
Imagine being in a police interrogation room, being aggressively interrogated or yelled at, lied to, and manipulated for 4, 5, 6, 9 hours over 2 days.
On September 3rd, 2003, Andrew Royer was brought into the Elkhart Police Department to be questioned in the murder of 94-year-old Helen Saylor.
There's a good factual record now, even though the interrogation itself was not recorded.
9 hours of interrogation over back-to-back days by former Detective Carl Conway, but only 1 hour of audio exists. We submitted a public records request for those recordings, but were denied, citing confidentiality.
Indicative of a disregard of memorializing the truth, not to record when you were previously recording.
Dr. Leo says Elkhart police stopped video recordings around 1997 after Edgar Garrett, who falsely confessed to killing his daughter, was acquitted of her murder. But with Andrew Royer, there were 2 audio statements, one on September 3rd and another on September 4th.
They'd already charged him with murder by the time of the second interrogation. So the fact that a second interrogation happened is an indictment of the fact that the first interrogation was fatally flawed.
So why interrogate Royer a second time if he already confessed?
He was drifting. He was having a difficult time staying focused.
That was 4 hours into the September 3rd interrogation. We obtained a 2018 deposition video where Conway says despite Royer's mental fatigue, he decided to record Royer's confession.
Isn't it true that you had to remind him that he actually gave a confession to murder?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Leo says some people with mental issues like Andrew Royer are weaker and could break easier under pressure during a long interrogation.
All of us think we would never falsely confess, but the truth is we all have a breaking point.
In Conway's deposition, he appears to be confused about whether or not he knew Royer had a mental illness. At one point, he said this.
Isn't it true that you were aware that he had a disability?
Yes, sir.
But later in the deposition, he contradicts himself.
As of today, I still have no knowledge of him having intellectual deficits.
Now, Dr. Leo authored a 38-page report on everything wrong with Royer's confession, including a sizable number of contradictions. Some of those are, Royer said Saylor's apartment was cleaned, but it was wrecked. He said Saylor's body was in the kitchen, but actually she was found in the bedroom. Royer said he pawned Saylor's jewelry, but the pawn shop had no record of it.
He got fact after fact after fact wrong in his confession, and that should have been a red flag to any properly trained interrogator.
We asked Elkhart County Prosecutor Vicki Becker if these were red flags to her.
I cannot really comment on evidence in the Royer case because there is a possibility we go forward again.
Royer's attorneys say if that's the case, they're ready.
Detective Conway admitted on the stand he was only ever able to corroborate 2 facts from Andy Royer's confession. 1, that he lived in the building, and 2, that he knew Lana Kanan. And that is an indictment, as clear of an indictment as you can ever get, that the information that was elicited from Andy Royer was false.
Now, in that deposition video, Lieutenant Conway couldn't remember who prepped him to take the stand, but believed that it was Vicki Becker. We still have yet to hear any comment from 11 people and agencies about Becker's comments that she was an eyewitness in Royer's interrogation.